Story 1. I cried about 4 days ago. I recently found out my dog had cancer, and I lost my job on the same day, May 28th. The next day, I got into a car accident and lost my car and my dog. Now it's just me and my boyfriend living at my uncle's because I have to restart. My boyfriend is helping too. Life has been rough. Story 2. My son is missing and has been for a long time. It takes a concerted effort not to cry. By the end of my workday, I am exhausted from trying not to cry. I try to make it all the way to the car before it starts again. Story 3. Yesterday, after a conversation with my mom, I realized she is battling dementia and slowly slipping away. Story 4. Today, my wife and I found out we experienced a miscarriage. We were planning to share the news of our pregnancy after the ultrasound, only to discover there was no heartbeat. Rest in peace at 6 weeks. Story 5. 3 years ago, my dog passed away, which was the worst kind of pain I have ever felt. I have lost family and friends, but none broke my heart as much as losing my dog. Story 6. I cried yesterday because my guinea pig died. I loved him so much. What makes it worse is that he was young and had more life to live. I will never forget him. Story 7. My stepfather died last week after being in my life for 25 years. I had a few small bouts of tears throughout the week, but I really let go on Friday night while talking to my girlfriend. She is truly a gem for handling my emotions so graciously. Story 8. When I found out that one of my advisors at college passed away, I was shocked. He was so young. I discovered today that it was due to a car accident. Story 9. Last night, my dad actually apologized for things that happened during my childhood. I never thought I would hear him say that. Maybe now I can work on forgiving him. Story 10. Magic mushrooms. 3 years ago, I was so stunned I couldn't speak. I was so in love with everything that all I could do was cry. Story 11. An hour ago, while walking my dog, I felt the weight of depression. I don't cry often or easily, but when that cold wave hits every year or so, it's overwhelming. Story 12. Today, I had a job interview, but I cried afterward because I knew it wasn't challenging enough for me, and I felt guilty. Story 13. Today, I went to make myself a cup of tea and thought about my dog who passed away 2 years ago this coming August. I miss him dearly, and I still struggle to talk about him without getting emotional. We had such a strong bond. He helped me during my bouts of depression and was always silly to make me laugh and have cuddle time. I always had the fan on and the window open, even in winter, since he was a Siberian Husky and liked it cool. I still maintain this routine, even though he is no longer around. I can't sleep without the fan on. It's a habit I've formed from having him. Rest in peace, Shadow, my beloved companion. Story 14. I was watching Inside Out 2 with my wife, and when Riley was having a panic attack, I thought about how I would feel if my 1-year-old daughter experienced one. My wife thought I was joking. The joke was on her. Later that day, while we were having lunch at a Brazilian steakhouse, she started crying when she realized that if there were a zombie outbreak, we would be doomed because we live next to a cemetery. The server asked, "So would you like the garlic chicken or?" Story 15. About 18 months ago, my dad died of cancer, and the image of him in the coffin will stay with me forever. Story 16. The last time I cried was when I didn't pass my driver's license test. I felt stupid, embarrassed, and like I had failed at something that everyone else seems to do so easily. It hit harder than I expected. Story 17. A few days ago, while I was texting my partner, we expressed our deep love for each other and ended up shedding happy tears just thinking about one another. Story 18. About 2 weeks ago, my brother passed away in a car accident about 8 months ago, and I have not coped with it very well. Story 19. I cried about 5 days ago when we had to put down our dog. We had him for over 13 years, and this was our first time saying goodbye to a dog. Story 20. About a day ago, my cat passed away from cancer. It was difficult to say goodbye. I had him for 11 years since I was 3. I don't even remember what life was like without him. I have been crying on and off, always thinking about him. Story 21. A couple of days ago, I was watching a movie. It wasn't a sad movie or anything, but I started crying and stopped within a minute. Story 22. I just had a panic attack followed by intense crying. It was because I felt overwhelmed. Story 23. The last time I cried was in 2019 when my girlfriend moved to Korea. She is the sweetest woman you will ever meet, and she lives there now. Story 24. I attended a concert at a local neighborhood pub, and this songwriter's music brought me to tears. It was this particular song that moved me deeply. Story 25. The last time I cried was about a month ago. It wasn't sobbing or anything, just a few tears fell down my face. It was the first time I cried in a year, and it was because of a really sad book I read. Honestly, it is the only book that has ever made me feel that much emotion. Story 26. A couple of months ago, I had a coworker who seems to take pleasure in making my life more difficult, and I can't figure out why. Additionally, the owner of the company is a micromanaging person who can't keep track of what he has been doing but will ask someone multiple times if they completed a task. Story 27. A few days ago, my brother cut me off in a very messy way. He left me when I needed support the most over a situation he misunderstood. At the same time, I lost my dream job, had to leave my apartment, and move back home. Then he kept my dog from me for 2 months. Not only did he refuse to let me speak to him or see my dog, but he also neglected her severely. She has epilepsy, severe allergies, and significant separation anxiety. When she returned, she acted traumatized. She was very skinny, dehydrated, and displayed numerous behavioral issues she never had before, especially regarding being kenneled or left alone, even for short periods. He hasn't spoken to me in almost a year, but now that he's getting married in a month, his fiancée reached out to me, and the whole situation feels insincere. Why does he want me there to support him during a big life event when he refused to even hear me out during the one and only time I asked for his support? I've been there for him through everything, from attempts to divorces, near-death experiences, and breakups. Every time he told me he needed my help, I dropped everything to give it to him. But when my life fell apart, he told me he didn't want me in his life at all. The situation had nothing to do with him. Something about him reaching out now when he has something big going on, after months of knowing I was suffering, feels unfair. If he cares about me so much that he wants me to celebrate with him, where was he when I needed him? Story 28. A few days ago, I have been struggling with anxiety and panic attacks. My mental health is in a very poor state and I am just tired. Story 29. A couple of weeks ago, I was in the grocery store and saw sumo tangerines. They were my late husband's favorite. I started crying and had to find the ladies' room. Story 30. Today, photo memories popped up on my phone of my old dog that we had to put down because he had cancer. Losing a pet is a unique kind of pain. Story 31. On April 11th, I spread my dad's ashes. He left this world on October 16th. I finally set him free. It was more emotional than I anticipated. Story 32. On April 21st, I was on a massive dose of magic mushrooms. I cried because I couldn't fathom how loyal and perfect my dogs are and how their friendship is such a beautiful thing. It was strange, but I felt really good afterward. Story 33. Even though I knew it was coming, as I have played the games countless times, I cried last week watching Joel die again. Story 34. Yesterday, I drove for 11 hours and then was asked to leave the campground where I stopped, as it was closed and there was no signage. I had to drive for another 2 hours to find a new location. Then I happily cried because I saw prairie dogs. Story 35. When I was born, I slapped the doctor. Just kidding, I cried last night. Those videos of soldiers reuniting are very emotional. Story 36. For the past 24 hours, my friend was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and given 6 to 12 months to live. 10 days later, he died. Just like that, he's gone. Story 37. Today, I am losing my housing and everything has fallen apart. I have paid over $14,000 for therapy since my sister died 2 years ago, but I just have not been able to get back on track fast enough. I do not have anywhere to go. I love my pets very much, I am exhausted. It is humiliating and concerning, and it is my responsibility to fix this situation. My mental state is truly compromised. I had to stop therapy because I ran out of money. I used to have my life together. Should I try to manifest affordable housing? Story 38. On my birthday, I was watching a video about a man who became a father. He provided a 1.5-hour summary of how his wife had a pregnancy complication. Unfortunately, their newborn baby did not survive, and he never had the chance to say goodbye. I had to fight back tears and struggled to sleep that night. Story 39. Yesterday, I'm a very emotional and sensitive person. These are my superpowers. The reason, a conversation with a friend went really well. I felt seen and validated, so I cried happy tears. Story 40. In late August and early September of last year, I moved from Pennsylvania to Michigan, leaving all my family and friends behind. I felt homesick. Story 41. About 6 minutes ago, I was telling my roommate about my son with special needs and how, when I was with my ex, who is not his mother, he kept asking her if she would be his mom. He didn't like his biological mother and wanted to live with us. Now he is in the hospital and it might be something serious. He is my firstborn, my oldest, and I am scared. Story 42. I broke up with my girlfriend and her 2 young children about 9 months ago. I changed their diapers and gave them baths. I watched them after I finished work so she could do her schoolwork for a nursing degree. She was my first serious relationship after college, but she had a lot of baggage. She was recently divorced and had student debt for a degree she never finished from years prior, and the children needed her at home, so she opted not to work with the support of her parents. I have cried at least once a week since. I initiated the breakup because during those last 3 months, I was crying constantly at work due to the insecurity being with her brought into my life. She made me feel as if the boundaries and expectations I had for us were unreasonable when I was just trying to ensure she had recovered financially before we were tied together. I ended the relationship not because she quit school, but because I realized I would never be good enough in her eyes. Even 2 years later, her parents were never warm or receptive to me. I am much less anxious now. I feel financially safe again. However, I had to break up not only with her but also with her 2 children, ages 3 and 5, and I never got to hug them goodbye. The only thing keeping me going right now is the hope that I can find a purer happiness with someone else in the future. Story 43. Today, my partner bought a new cologne that he thought I would love. He sprayed it on me in the car, and it smelled just like my mom. As a child, I was taught that crying was unacceptable for boys and men. Some lessons linger well into adulthood. Story 45. My 2-year-old niece has delayed speech development. Nothing overly concerning at her age, but she said my name with all 3 syllables the other day, and my heart exploded. Story 46. 2 days ago, I was listening to the Psalm Fable and thinking about how horrible it would be if I lost my sister. I don't think I would ever feel whole again. Story 47. A couple of days ago, my beloved 17-year-old dog passed away a year ago, and the sadness still hits me unexpectedly. I miss my sweet angel. Story 48. I am about to move from Chicago to the deep south of the United States. I am leaving behind a fantastic group of friends and a wonderful city. I have been crying almost every day for the past week. Story 49. I felt a little misty-eyed this evening watching a live show of one of my favorite bands. I know I am making progress out of depression when I get emotional listening to music. The last time I had an all-out cry was months ago when I lay broken in a pile in my bed after a breakup. Story 50. This afternoon, I watched the news about the mass murder in Vancouver from yesterday. It is such a terrible tragedy. Story 51. I had been locked out of my Facebook account for about a year. I recently regained access and was checking my best friend's memorial page. That same day, I learned that another good friend had died and that my ex-wife had also passed away. It was an emotional overload. Story 52. The last time I cried was when I was listening to the song Dreaming of You by Selena. It is such a heartbreaking song. Story 53. An hour ago, I was in a grocery store. I could walk at full speed without having to rest. I have spent the last couple of months extremely ill. I would have jumped for joy, but I didn't want to look strange. Story 54. The night Trump was elected for the second time was also the day I picked up my cat's ashes. It was a dark night. Story 55. Today, for multiple reasons, my husband and I just saw Revenge of the Sith in the theater. A local place was playing it for the 20th anniversary premiere. Story 56. I cried after having a dream about my ex a few weeks ago. I am in a healthy relationship right now, about 10 months in. My last relationship lasted years, and we had children together. In my dream, he apologized for all his mistakes, and it felt genuine. It felt like he loved me wholeheartedly. Then I woke up and cried because I knew it was my own projection of what I wished had happened in the end. I cried because I was mourning what could have been. Story 57. About half an hour ago, I realized people just want something from me. No one actually wants me. I feel like I'm just being used again, as usual. Story 58. Right now, and most of the day, I am overwhelmed by feelings of loneliness and hopelessness. I struggle to survive with prices of everything being astronomical and no end in sight. At 58 years old, I feel devastated by how my life has turned out, and I am ashamed of feeling like a failure. Today, it reached a critical point, and the tears started and haven't stopped yet. I am going to allow myself to express these emotions for as long as it takes. Story 59. Today, I lost my patience. My group member decided not to bring the materials and lied to the professor, claiming I didn't send my portion. I submitted it a week ago and have proof in my inbox. He printed my work and used it for his part because he didn't want to fail. I lost it and yelled at him, calling him out for his behavior. I'm especially angry because he openly admitted he would do this, that he had failed this class before, and that he was happy to take on the final project because he didn't want to do the readings. This frustrates me as a mature student struggling financially, especially since I was still exhausted from my last shift. This class focuses on marginalized youth, and despite choosing this major, he seems indifferent. We need to learn about vulnerable populations, but it doesn't seem to matter to him. Sometimes I catch him texting during discussions. Story 60. A few hours ago, someone posted pictures of them giving their pet their best on its last day. I am very empathetic and get emotional easily. Story 61. A week ago, I was off my anxiety and depression medications without realizing it, and things started piling up. Felt like I had a very bad emotional breakdown. Story 62. A year ago, when my uncle passed away, it felt strange because I was okay at the funeral, but I crumbled alone the day after. Story 63. Today, while visiting an animal shelter and reading about a cat who was left behind when her owners moved, it broke my heart. Story 64. My friend died on April 13th. I found out on the 14th. They buried him on the 15th. It happened so quickly that by the time I saw the obituary for the funeral information, it was already taking place. I missed my friend's funeral. Story 65. Today, when my husband told me he wasn't making cornbread with our beans, I felt disappointed. I'm 37 weeks pregnant, and he usually makes the cornbread. Story 66. This morning, I felt overwhelmed with emotion upon seeing a picture of my ex and me, who still live together. I am terribly afraid that we will never be together again. Story 67. I will feel sad tomorrow because it's my birthday, and as always, I will celebrate it alone. I have another year of slow misery to look forward to. Only 30 years to go. Story 68. I feel sad, lonely, and desperate. I have low self-worth because someone I'm infatuated with doesn't want to have anything to do with me, and I keep deluding myself into thinking he does. Story 69. I cried watching I'm Still Here again, learning things I didn't know from the previous times I watched it. Story 70. I don't remember. I'm not overly emotional. There are only certain times when I cry, but it is not frequent. Story 71. I was having a very rough day. I just totaled my work van with a trailer attached and was trying to clean up the mess I had made in the trailer. It was a disaster. My daughter arrived to help with my ex-wife. She jumped right in, doing her best to clean up the mess alongside me, and noticed that I was probably the biggest mess of all. She touched my shoulder and said, "Dad, stop." I looked at her and she hugged me. I broke down crying. Then she said, "Okay, we are good now. Let's clean this up. Okay?" And we did. Story 72. I have cried every day multiple times for 5 years straight. Time doesn't always heal. It sometimes makes things worse. It is a culmination of many traumatic and sad experiences in my life. Too much to explain here. Story 73. This morning, I'm feeling very poor, hungry, and lonely. It's been challenging dealing with poverty for 5 years. It's really taking a toll on me. Each day goes by, and my needs are increasing. It feels overwhelming, and I worry I will never be able to meet my basic needs. I find myself feeling like crying. What else can I do? Story 74. I cried probably last week. I am recovering from an ankle fracture, my first one, which occurred this past February. Being limited and not able to give my all is quite frustrating, especially since I practiced martial arts and want to continue. Not being able to work out or enjoy activities like dancing is disappointing. Story 75. I was crying along with Santa. A few months ago, I watched a video from a news station featuring a man dressed as Santa. He brought a toy to a child who was very sick in the hospital. He told the little boy he was Santa's best elf. The boy passed away in Santa's arms. My dad also dresses up as Santa and participates in events in his city. This Santa wasn't my dad, but I know from listening to him that he does it all from his heart. Story 76. Childhood experiences that I still feel bitter about. Nothing says a father's love like jokingly suggesting suicide via a car crash to a son who is already in a bad place. Story 77. My grandma died last September and my grandpa last December. This has been the reason I cry almost once a week. Story 78. This morning, I had to put my cat to sleep. I am at work right now trying to stay composed, but when I get home in a few hours and he isn't there, it is going to be difficult. Story 79. 2 days ago, I was out of town at my sister's house and vomited everything in my stomach. I couldn't take anything to help because of an antibiotic I was on. On top of chronic pain, I just wanted my cat. Story 80. A day ago, I had an abortion due to complications during the pregnancy. They found a 9-centimeter cyst, and they think it could be cancerous. I am 20 years old. Story 81. I cried a few days ago because I felt extremely overwhelmed with everyone and everything. I had to isolate myself for a whole day to find some relief. Story 82. It was a few weeks ago, and it was likely something sad in the news. The last time I cried about anything personally was 9 years ago when my then husband unexpectedly presented me with divorce papers. Story 83. February of this year was especially difficult for me. I experienced tears for the first time in years, and it was due to a panic attack. It was not a trivial experience. Story 84. I think it was 2016 when my guinea pig died. She was the first pet I ever had, and I became very emotionally attached to her. She had a lot of personality, more than I initially expected from a guinea pig. The sad part was the brutality of her death. We noticed she was acting strangely in the morning, low energy, lying down, and so on. At first, we weren't alarmed since she was our first guinea pig, but we checked her over anyway and saw nothing unusual. A couple of hours later, we decided to wash her. What we saw was horrifying. Countless tiny living worms washed out of her. We immediately went to the veterinarian. It turned out that a few days earlier, a fly had infested her. She had been sick before and was likely still weak from that, and the larvae had been eating her from the inside out since then. The vet couldn't help. They said we could wait for her to die naturally or spare her the pain and put her down. It was a miracle she had survived the night, so we put her down. I don't cry often. I probably would have cried even if it had happened more mercifully. But that really hurt. Still hurts as I write this. To this day, I wonder if we could have done something differently. But we were simply ignorant of the possibilities. Nowadays, we are hypervigilant for any signs that something might be wrong with our guinea pigs. Every guinea pig we have adopted since the first one has survived until old age. But I'll never forget the first. I still have a picture of her and her buddy in my bedroom, happily munching away at the plants that grew between our garden tiles. Story 85. Last night, my wife had a terrible day and broke down while telling me about it. It made me sad to see her feeling that way, and I cried with her in my arms. Story 86. Today, I was watching The Golden Girls. It was Blanche's birthday episode where Sophia is making the cake late. The girls are talking about their cherished birthdays. Rose shares a story about her last birthday in St. Olaf. She's speaking to Charlie, who has passed away, and it really resonates with me. I still talk to my ex-husband, who was also one of my best friends until he died. He chose to go out on his own terms. Rose mentions that one of the reasons she is leaving is that there are too many memories, and she needs to start over somewhere else. That's exactly how I feel about my city. Everywhere I look, there's a memory. That's why I want to move somewhere new. Story 87. Talking to a therapist about undiagnosed sleep apnea and how I have been seeing a doctor about it. To be honest, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I just stopped breathing one night and didn't start back up again. Story 88. I had an autism-related meltdown yesterday because I couldn't find my noise-canceling headphones and had school in 5 minutes. I cried then. Story 89. Seeing my best friend of 13 years hold his newborn son after struggling with chronic pain and being told for most of his life that he was infertile brought me to tears of joy when I received those pictures from the hospital. Story 90. Just yesterday, I was trying to write my ex's name in response to a post and completely broke down. It's pretty pathetic that it's been 8 months. Story 91. Last week, I felt sicker than I ever have in my life, and I can't get any medical professionals to truly listen, respond to me, or help me find the root cause. I felt hopeless and afraid. I still do, but I'm too tired to cry. I've lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks and it's still happening. Story 92. 4 weeks ago, I took my dog to the vet because he had a growth that appeared out of nowhere. The veterinarian stated that it was most likely cancer, which was my biggest fear going in. I cried on my way home, thinking of all the worst things. Today, he is currently in surgery to remove the growth, and all signs point to a positive outlook for him. Story 93. Yesterday, I watched several videos titled Actor in the Criterion Closet because Rosamund Pike's video was shared on Reddit. I went through many of them and then started watching Winona Ryder's. She began to express her feelings about afterlife. Once she mentioned something like, "You get asked what your favorite memory was, and these people recreate it in the afterlife for you to experience again." I started to cry. I immediately thought of the memory I would choose. It was very early in our relationship. It was when my soulmate told me about how she accidentally added a little bit of actual honey to her coffee and almond milk. I use Blue Diamond almond milk with a hint of honey for my coffee creamer, and she wanted to try it. However, she bought regular almond milk and added honey herself. In her mind, it was almond milk plus some honey. She abruptly ended the relationship around the middle of December. We dated for a little over 3 years and 3 months. We regularly promised we would be each other's forever. We planned to get married. We wanted to select the rings for each other. It's been a little over 4 months, and I still break down. I don't harbor any negative feelings toward her for this decision. I genuinely believe it was her own diagnosed anxiety that caused our breakup, not her. I wouldn't hold it against her if she wanted to try again. There is no one else for me. But I know when I'm nearing my death, I will think of her ruining her coffee and how endearingly cute that was, and my final moments won't be so painful. Story 94. About a week ago, during the recovery period for my monthly retinopathy treatment, I received an injection in my eye. I want to see how tearless you are after that. Story 95. Remember, you only receive upvotes if your answer is truly compelling. So be sure to construct a heartfelt story about a loved one facing hardship, illness, job loss, and similar topics. Anything for upvotes. Story 96. Just recently, my grandma died in late February of this year. My aunt sold all 3 of grandma's dogs to a butcher 2 weeks later. My cousin, My only housemate in Grandma's house and my main sister figure is moving into a dorm 3 cities south for her last 6 months of internship on Monday. She'll come to visit every Friday, but at this point, I'm not ready. In short, I'm scared that the people I care about will leave me permanently. I don't want to cry in front of others because it'll make me look vulnerable, so I cry alone in my room. Story 97. Last night, I am freshly divorced. My whole life fell apart, and I have nothing. I had to move in with my parents. My dad's doctor's appointment yesterday pointed to metastasized prostate cancer. I lost my ability to work, my wife cheated on me, and I had a mental breakdown. I am definitely in a midlife crisis. My mom's health is declining, and now my dad has a good chance of having stage 4 cancer. That's just in the last year. They do not make enough medications for that amount of plot thickening. Story 98. My dog is very old and has started to become frail. I am afraid of losing her because I believe she is my soulmate. 14 years is not long enough. Story 99. Yesterday, something sad happened in a well-written show I was watching, and it affected me emotionally. Story 100. Just a few days ago, I can't remember exactly, but I think I was afraid I wasted an opportunity to get something I really wanted. Story 101. A few weeks ago, I had to watch my dog die in my arms. He trusted me and I couldn't save him. I don't think I will ever forgive myself. Story 102. My wife's college graduation was last Friday. We were in a serious car accident last year, and her car was totaled. Due to her injuries, she had to drop out that semester to focus on healing. I felt a mix of pride and relief. It felt like an accomplishment for me as well, even though it wasn't. When she was overwhelmed by school, I took care of everything around the house, from cleaning to making sure her car was always ready, so she wouldn't be late. It was an emotional day, and I don't usually cry. Story 103. In November 2022, I was in a perfectly healthy relationship. Everything was going great until suddenly, she decided to go no contact. It was the saddest day of my life. Story 104. Last night, my wife was in the hospital because, despite the chemotherapy, her tumors are larger. On Friday, my dad was diagnosed as well. Story 105. I cried a few days ago to my mom about feeling overwhelmed with life, having to make adult decisions, and dealing with high expenses. I felt much better afterward. Life is still overwhelming, but I needed to cry. Story 106. 2 days ago, my friend said something that hurt my feelings. It was pretty benign, really constructive criticism, probably. But I'm already a sensitive person, and I was experiencing premenstrual syndrome, so I ended up crying while mowing the lawn, just like Dennis Leary said. Story 107. Last week, for about 2 days, I reflected on a situation that ended, even though the love still remained. I realized I needed to make healthier choices for my life. I still have bad days, but the pain is finally fading, thanks to the lack of effort from both of us. I keep telling myself that a year from now, it will just be a distant memory of someone I loved more than myself. Story 108. Yesterday, my baby wouldn't stop waking himself up every time I got him to fall asleep. He was awake for the 7th hour in a row, screaming and crying because he was tired but wouldn't relax. It's very hard when you can't solve the little one's problem for them. It makes you feel as if you have failed. Story 109. Having to walk away from my dog and making the difficult decision to euthanize him when I was not prepared to leave without him was heartbreaking. He had intervertebral disc disease, and the MRI alone cost $5,000 while the surgery was $10,000, with only a 2% chance of him walking again. I couldn't even say goodbye because I knew if I went back in, I would never be able to let him go. Story 110. Right now, I want to pass my certified public accountant exams and have the man I love return my feelings. I don't know why I believe that making money and obtaining the license will bring him back. It makes me sad. Story 111. A few weeks ago, my job interview was canceled at the last minute while I was driving. Luckily, I have another one coming up. Story 112. Why do we respond to bland and personal questions, likely generated by artificial intelligence, like this one? Here is my answer. It's none of your business. Story 113. I cried a few months ago during a mental breakdown. This morning I produced excess tears when I put my contacts in and had an eyelash stuck under one of them. Story 114. About a month ago, I was emotionally embarrassed when I confessed to my adult married son that I was molested at the age of 12. Story 115. Almost a year ago, my dad suffered a stroke that resulted in the loss of his ability to walk, speak, and eat normally. He now lives in a nursing home. It's hard to believe he once had a normal life. Story 116. I was overwhelmed by my experience, and I shed a few tears. I'm still aching. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.